Today I'm dehydrating some fruit. I'm going to be doing some pineapple and apple slices at the same time. Why would you ever dehydrate fruit? Unless you've tried your own dehydrated fruit, you may really not know. Like dehydrated pineapple is so good. They're just delicious. If you're somebody who likes to go hiking, somebody who likes to go camping, these are great snacks that you can just throw in your backpack and bring with you. They're nutritious, they're not store-bought, there's no added sugar to it unless you want to. So it's a really easy way to make something that's really nutritious. You can throw these in your kids' lunch boxes if you need to. And as well, these fruit keep for a long time. So you can store them in a jar, store them in an airtight container, and they'll really last. I'm going to be doing the apples and pineapples, and I'm going to start with the apples. Apples need a little bit of TLC when you're prepping apples to dehydrate. There's different ways to prepare your apples. You can, I don't have an apple core, so I'm not going to core it. So I'm going to just leave the seeds in, and when they're dry, I'll take them out. But if I had an apple core, I would core them just to get rid of the seeds right away. And you also need to dip them in some kind of solution. So what's recommended for apples to dip them in, you can buy it's called like a sulfite dip or an ascorbic acid mixture that you would mix up and dip them in. And this is to prevent them from turning brown. It doesn't affect the quality of the product. Maybe it won't last quite so long, I think, if it turns brown, but it's more like an appearance. That being said, what I use is orange juice. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to slice my apples and then soak them in the orange juice for 5 minutes to prevent them from turning too brown during the dehydration process. So I'm going to get that done right away first, and then we'll look after our pineapple. So I'm going to start by slicing my apples, and I have a mandolin. The reason why I use a mandolin is just because my slices are more even, and they'll dry at a more consistent rate. But if you don't have a mandolin, by all means use your knife. You'll be able to get it done as well. They just may not dry as quickly or at the same rate as all your slices. So I'm going to slice these. You always, as usual, start by washing your fruit. So I've got all my fruit washed. And as I slice, I will place them into the orange juice. The first step in preparing your apple is you need to peel it first. And I'm just going to do them one at a time so I can get them quickly into the orange juice. You need to slice them at 1/8 of an inch. So I've gotten my first apple slice, and it's not too bad even though I've left the seeds in. You can even just pop the seeds out. And I think that's going to dehydrate where it's not going to even matter that I haven't cored it. So I'm going to drop them right away while they're still nice and white into the orange juice. I'm going to eat some. While my apples are soaking, I am going to look after my pineapple. Fun fact, I don't know if you know, the way to tell if your pineapple is ripe or not is to tug on the leaves on the top. If you can't pull the leaf, or I think they're leaves, if you can't pull it out, then it's not ripe. If it almost falls out, it could be overripe. You want to look for one that has a little bit of give to it when you pull, like that's not really stuck in, but when you do pull it out, that it does come out. So my pineapple needs to be sliced at about 1/2 an inch, where the apples it was 1/8 of an inch, so a little bit thicker. The apples will take anywhere between 4 to 10 hours to dehydrate, where the pineapple is about 24 to 36 hours. So it's a lot longer, but you can understand, like, a pineapple is so full of liquid, and we need to get rid of that juice so it doesn't go bad or it doesn't mold. So that's why a pineapple will take a little bit more time. So now I'm going to slice up the pineapple. Mine is pretty ripe, so I'm not going to core it. I'm going to see if I can slice it in my mandolin, but that might be a little bit of a struggle as well. I may have to slice it by hand, but I mean, it should go fairly quickly. I'm going to cut it in half and see if this works. Pretty good. Now always make sure, as soon as you're done with your mandolin, to put your blade down, because I can't emphasize enough on how these are dangerous and you can easily cut yourself. So just make sure you put your blade down safely. Once you've got all your fruit sliced, the only thing that's left to do is to lay it out on your dehydrator. Anytime you're doing any kind of dehydrating, you want to make sure that you lay out your fruit or your vegetables properly. So first of all, what I've done is I've taken my apples out of the orange juice and I'm just letting them drip a little bit just to make sure that there's not too much liquid inside. And I'm going to start by putting my pineapple on the bottom. So I'm just going to spread out my pineapple on the bottom, not overlapping them and making sure that they don't touch. And then you just keep stacking your trays and adding your fruit until you've got all your fruit laid out. So now I'm going to add my apples. I'm going to lay out my apples. Same thing. You want to spread them out on your trays evenly, not overlapped, so they dry as quickly as possible. So how do you know when they're dry? Well, you don't want them brittle because you don't want them where you bend them over and they break. So they still need to be pliable. There can't be any moisture in them, and they shouldn't stick. Once they're dry, if you fold them in half, they shouldn't stick together either. It's a fine line, and it's something that you sometimes need to play around with to know. But so you just spread them out on your sheets until you've got all your apples laid out. You need to dry these at 135 degrees on your dehydrator. So once you've got them all laid out, you're going to put the cover on your dehydrator. So once you have your cover on your dehydrator, you're going to plug this in, turn the heat up to 135 degrees Fahrenheit, and let the drying begin. And I will check in from time to time just to show you how it's going and what it's looking like. I am technically about 6 hours into the dehydrating, but unfortunately the power went out a little earlier and it was out for about a couple of hours, so I lost a couple of hours. But we're still going to check to see how things are moving along and just have a look. So I have an empty tray because my dehydrator does recommend to always have 4 trays. So I only had 3 full trays, so I put an empty tray on top. So just to give you an idea, so these are the apples, and maybe I'll just flip them around. And they're really sticky. They're nowhere near being ready. They've still got a ways to go. And now the pineapples. Some of the edges are kind of turning brown, but these are nowhere near being ready. They're still really, really wet. I'm not sure if I'll leave them overnight. It'll depend when I check them again later how damp they are. If they're still really wet, I'll leave them overnight, but if they're getting, if they're somewhere close to being, I don't like to leave it overnight and not be able to watch it. So I'm going to plug them back in and let them continue dehydrating. The majority of the apples were pretty much dry. So this is the equivalent of 3 apples. They were pretty small. And as you can see, dipping them in the orange juice really didn't turn brown too much. And I just want to show you they're really pliable. I can bend them, but they're not brittle. They don't break. So they're really just nice. And I threw the rest of the ones that weren't done inside with the pineapples. The pineapples are still a long way from being done. Like when I touch them, they're really still pretty wet, and so the pineapples still have a long way to go before they're done. I'll see what I want to do if I want to leave them on overnight. I'm not too crazy about leaving appliances on overnight, so I may just unplug it for the night and then resume the drying tomorrow. So we'll see. Here's the end result of my dehydrated fruit. The apples took around 8 hours, and as you can see, they're really pliable, they're soft, they don't stick together, they don't feel sticky at all, so they've turned out really nice. And I find that the orange juice did a really good job. They haven't gotten dark at all. The pineapple, I want to say, took like 24 hours. So if we're looking at the pineapple, it's the same thing. It doesn't feel sticky at all. They don't stick together. And look how pretty these are. I find they almost look like little flowers. So they're really pretty. So dehydrating, like I said, is a really great way to make some food that you can keep for extended periods of time. You can throw in a backpack. You're not afraid it's going to make a mess. So all you need to do to store these is you can store them in an airtight container, and as long as they stay away from any kind of moisture, they can last for months in this state. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, feel free to leave me comments in the comment section. Don't be shy. Subscribe to my channel if you like the content, and keep an eye to see what other projects I'll be coming out with soon.